Hello everybody, this is Fernando for the latest Mysteries and Oddities of the Week video. I thought I would mix one of these in while I was wrapping up the Urban Legends video. And actually this particular entry came from a past Urban Legends session, something about a little over 2 years or so ago. I thought I would talk about this one on the Mysteries and Oddities side because when I was looking at the information, yet again it has to do with something, an oddity or a mystery of sorts that involved a large group of people disappearing from a location, and to this day there's no whereabouts as to where exactly they are or how it happened, and it remains just as mysterious as it was back then. And it reminded me also of one of my more popular set of videos, the Dyatlov Pass incident. If you haven't had a chance, check them out. I'm going to include the links for them below. But yes, I made those a couple years back, and it reminded me so much about that particular tale. Very popular set of videos, good set of views. So to this day, they remain pretty up there in terms of the number of people watching them. But yes, because of all those features, I decided to mix it here under the Mysteries and Oddities side, and it has to do with this. It has various names, but in essence, I guess the most common name can be the Lake Anjikuni Mystery, or in other versions, it's known more on the lines of the the Lake Anjikuni Mystery disappearances. So let's go ahead and let's talk about all the interesting information associated with this bizarre mystery, like what happened to these villagers. So what exactly occurred during this Lake Anjikuni mystery? Well, you have to go back in time, not too far back, but at least up around until 1930 or so, specifically in November of 1930 to get a good whereabouts of that time. And when you go back there, at that time there was at that location a village near a place called Lake Anjikuni, hence the name essentially of its mystery. This village was filled with Inuits, which are people that are considered essentially indigenous people, either of Canada or parts of Greenland or parts of Alaska. In this case, though, the Anjikuni Lake is in Canada, so it consisted of indigenous people from that location. Now, based on, I guess, the versions of these stories of this particular mystery, this village either housed as little as 30 people or up to 2,000 people. So quite a broad range. It's up to you to decide essentially how much or how little the number of people are there. But the whole point was, apparently there was a group of people that lived there, and these villagers have lived there for quite some time. They had a good system in place. They had the usual stuff involving these huts, these houses. They had places for their hunting. They had places for their gathering, for their cooking, whatever was the case. I was even reading information about a place for their weapons as well, because they had rifles too that they used for hunting and for protection. Essentially all the stuff you normally expect with a village. But on that fateful month, in this case of November 1930, something happened before then. Something essentially that was so instantaneous, and here are the clues that tied to it, that caused to the mystery of these people. Because during that time there was a guy, a trapper, a fur trapper, who lived there in Canada, who went by the name of Joe LaBelle. Either he was lost somewhere in the cold, or he was wandering from point A to point B, and I guess either figured out that it was going to be way too cold to get to point B, so he decided to stop by that village, the one that's located by that Lake Anjikuni. He knew about that village, I guess, from past experience. He must have stopped there before, must have traded, whatever was the case. He was there on previous occasions, and so knew about his existence and was going to stop there along this pathway. However, when he did so, much to his shock, he realized that some things immediately stood out. For starters, and this is all based again on various versions, but one version was he was expecting to hear, in this case, the telltale sign of these dogs, these snow dogs, the ones that help out the villagers. They're both with their hunting and with their travels. He was expecting essentially the barking of these dogs to announce his presence, but he figured out that lo and behold, he wasn't hearing them. No matter how close he got to the village, there was nothing along those lines. Also, he was not seeing other stuff like he was expecting, I guess, like smoke to come out from one location where either food or something else was being burned. He didn't see that. He didn't see people wandering in and out of the village as well, which he was also expecting. And he wasn't hearing the usual noise that you hear whenever you have the vicinity of people around. Like imagine if you were just walking down, in this case, an average suburb, you're bound to hear noises, the average noise you would expect of people living in and around there. But no, in this case, all he heard was just essentially the cold air around him. And so the closer he got, that's when he saw and he was able to confirm there was nobody around. He got to the village, he started looking around it, but there was absolutely nobody. He was the only person. Not only that, but there was no animals, there were no wildlife, nothing. Essentially, the entire village was completely by itself. That must have been so unsettling, just the thought. Like, again, imagine you're walking to a town, maybe you're going back to your hometown, small town, visit your family, and when you do so, you're expecting to see somebody, something out there as you arrive, but then you don't see anybody, not a living soul, no matter how far into that location you get into. Such was the case with him. He got inside, he didn't see anybody, and he saw further things that pointed to a weird occurrence. It seems like whoever was there previously, all these villagers, they left in an instant hurry. In one case, one version, he found a charred pot of stew that was still emanating steam. So that must have been like within hours, essentially, that these people left. He also found, and this was almost like a forbidden thing, considering how careful the villagers are, but he found a stockpile of guns, essentially all out, left in the open. Again, something very sacred for them because of the importance of protection, the importance of hunting, but there they all were, just left as is. And he found various parts of the village, the huts, unchecked. Like, in other words, they weren't mounted down for protection. They didn't have stuff closed to prevent the cold from coming in. Just stuff that you would clearly expect people that were manning and caring for a village to have done so. He also found clothing astrew, food also left about. Just strange things, like all pointing to one essential thing, that these people, however many they were, all essentially left all at once, like just a quick run. But I was trying to see if maybe he was able to find something along the lines of footprints, because presumably there would have been snow around that location, but nothing I was reading about it. Or it could be that after they left, all the snow, the new snow, essentially covered all the previous footprints. But according to one version, he did come across, in this case, some dead dogs, the dogs that were used as sled dogs that I was mentioning earlier, and they had all died of starvation, which points to them having been abandoned for a long time. And then in other versions, he did find some dogs that were alive, but they were very far away from the village itself. And then in other versions, he found a large, in this case, one single grave site that was unearthed from, not from animals, but from something else, because clearly, in this case, the stones around it were carefully left as is, but the actual grave was taken out. And then in other versions of the story, he found large numbers of graves unearthed. So again, take it with a grain of salt which one is the true one, but I was reading both versions of these as I was going through several stories related to this mystery. Obviously, this guy LaBelle was just freaked out by this point and suffering from some kind of frostbite. He went past the village, I guess, to the closest telegraph office that he could, and there he was able to get some help. He called the or in this case sent a message to the Canadian Mountain Police. They came over, they searched as well throughout the village inside and out, but they were not able to find anything. Nothing that could point to exactly what happened to these villagers. I mean, you would think that with, let's say, all these new support, all these new people, you know how whenever the police do a mass search these days, like they'll go to a point, they'll essentially create a grid, and within that grid they'll start checking off each box of each grid, and then that way they would slowly but surely go through the entire grid, and they would consider that a complete search. I imagine something along those lines was done here, but they could not find anything, nothing at all, that would point to what exactly occurred. And yes, to this very day, nothing else has been, I guess, allocated to what happened to these people. I mean, to this day, it just remains as mysterious as before. In fact, this village, apparently throughout the years, after a couple of decades, it started to be removed from maps, from locations around that area, to this day just no longer being there. Obviously, maps pointing to the lake are still there, but before then, whenever you had stuff pointing to this village, it's no longer listed at all. The only other thing to tie in about this mystery was this Canadian Mounted Police Force, when they came over, apparently they reported seeing some kind of strange blue light that was pulsing somewhere in the horizon, very, very far away, but still close enough for them to be able to see it. And obviously in an area like that, you're not supposed to expect something like that out there outside of the northern lights. But in this case, a pulsing light, something that could clearly be some more artificial, they were not expecting that, but they saw it somewhere in the horizon, and that's the only other thing that they could tie in to this mystery. But yes, as far as what people can surmise, nothing else in terms of true evidence, but these are all basic things that people have come up with. The clearest path seems to be stuff along the lines of aliens, because within that location, and especially being way up north, you hear stories of aliens doing a lot of visits to villagers, a lot of people that are out there, all these indigenous people, and maybe the people themselves have talked about those for a long, long time, about seeing them, about seeing these strange ships flying out there. So a lot of evidence points to that, and also ties into that blue light that people saw. Could there have been a mass, in this case, abduction from a group of aliens, just in this case 30 to 2,000 people, depending on the story? It's up to you to decide, but that is the most common answer to what occurred to these people. Another thing that points to them was more on the lines of supernatural stuff, and this comes from this guy, this Joe LaBelle himself, because when he was being interviewed and he gave his thoughts on what occurred, he mentioned that in that area the Anjikuni people kept referring, but in this case in a hushed tone, like it was something that they obviously considered very sacred to not mention, but it was about this evil spirit by the name of Torn Rark, which was something that was up there, who was a powerful sky deity, who was someone that was just pretty bad, like in this case a bad spirit, a malevolent spirit. And so he surmised that something occurred up there involving this evil spirit, and then that the spirit either took out its wrath on them or took out its wrath on one of them, but then thought maybe we'll take, that he'll take on the whole town itself. That came straight from LaBelle, so that is his theory. Another one involves, this is more on the lines of, I guess, of just see if it sticks to the wall type stuff, but another idea involves vampires. Yes, that's true, vampires. There's even the notion of that. I think that comes more on the lines from that movie 30 Days of Night. Very good movie, by the way, but that I think that's more after that movie came out. That's when people started to tie in that example to this mystery, because the whole idea of vampires going out there and experiencing, in this case, a large number of days of nights, hence the name of the movie, maybe that's something that was similar to this location, this Lake Anjikuni, where they could go out there and spend a large number of time and be out there without having any interference. Of course, that's just something that is just another angle, but is quickly dismissed. But that's pretty much it. What are your thoughts? What do you think exactly happened to this village? Very eerie when you think about it. You would not believe that it would be unsettling, but again, imagine you're going to visit your parents or your family or your coworkers or whatever, and as you go to that destination, you don't see anything, nothing, no people, no animals, no livestock, nothing. All you see are just abandoned homes. It would quickly become unsettling. So whatever happened to these people, whatever made them leave in such a hurry, it has yet to be explained to this very day. So alright, everybody, if anybody has any info, please post those comments, share that information below. It'd be great to hear. Maybe something else I might have missed that was quite important. It'd be great to hear those comments. So alright, everyone, thanks again as always. Take care.